This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Is a paid program. The content is provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership are not responsible for the content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. And now, the host of the Team Martek Hour, Joe Martek.
I got the finger again from our producer extraordinary's husband.
That's a lawsuit.
Listen. One of the problems with Sue and Greg, he's not collectible. He doesn't have enough money. It's not worth it. What Greg says. Please win and take the station and give me a job where I can make some money. 340-1590. 34. Don't you hate it when people tell the truth, Greg? I mean, this is not a good thing. 340-1590. Back in 2004, Dan Warren, independent insurance agent, which is now World Insurance Agency, Associates, whatever. By the way, for those of you that are regular,
it's not the World Health Organization.
Yeah, it's not the World Health Organization.
I was going to say they took him over too.
Oh. Yeah. Well, what
they're doing a lot.
Dan officially decided to be an old guy, and officially to retire. So this new company, which is one of the biggest in America.
Wait a minute. Why should he retire and not us?
Well, it's not fair. I didn't say it was fair. Lord save me. Why are we here and he's not? There's something wrong with this picture.
Fair.
Yeah. Oh. So, no. But Dan was the consummate independent insurance agent, and the way his system is set, for those of you that don't understand independent insurance agents, if you work for one company, which I was a captive agent for Farmers years ago, the only thing I could sell were Farmers insurance products, and if Farmers didn't insure it, they'd say, okay, you can go to somebody else. Then I'd go to somebody else, and they'd say, oh, you're Farmers, you're captive, we don't want you because you're only giving me your leftovers. But the independent does not work for one company. He works for the insured. And then under his umbrella, there might be 20 or 50 or more companies. And with Dan, there was roughly 100. And now there's even more than 100 companies. Hundreds now.
Yeah.
So literally, and I watched it happen with regular people that we know right here in this room that were insured. Dan invariably has been able to help almost every single person. And then, if your renewal comes, very often they'll call you up and say, hey, I got bad news. We've got to lower your insurance costs by $300 or $400. I mean, I'm kidding about the bad news, but
Dan was one of the few that could actually get an umbrella policy for us when, for some reason, there was a period of time, a couple of years, where for whatever reason, suddenly what I was doing apparently was high risk. And I always said, the most high-risk thing about what I was doing was carrying the PC from the counter to the back and dropping it on my foot. But again,
that's when everybody had PCs.
That's when they still do actually.
Yeah.
If you go look right now, like I said, we've got Mondays are one of our busiest days, and then kind of flattens out for the rest of the week. All the problems seem to concentrate over the weekends. Yeah. But no, Dan was one of the few that was able to actually get us a line. We wanted to basically be able to protect the equipment there at the store, and for the customers our own equipment and such. And for whatever reason, I won't mention the name of the national carrier, but I think they're based out of Columbus. That's all I'll say. They dropped us a number of years after being with them for forever. And like I said, I went to literally probably 8 to 10 different agents.
Sure.
And, Dan was the only one that could actually get it done, and it was actually at a better price than what I was paying with the National.
Well, so, I've got the same experience with Dan, and literally, if we had Mike Paulus here, mortgage broker, who is also part of our group, what happens is when somebody gets qualified for a mortgage, it's based on the ability to pay. So you have a paycheck. You have
Wait a minute, you have to pay him back?
I know. Can you imagine that?
No.
You mean
Unless you get a reverse
is that the
mortgage.
new rule?
Unless you get a reverse mortgage, right?
I thought that we weren't doing that still. Are we doing that now?
Yeah, we now have the rule is
That's
you have to prove you
old-fashioned
can actually
stuff.
make the payment. Well, what happens is
When did that happen?
included in the
shocking.
payment is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So very often people are qualified, and let's say they're within $10 every month for qualifying for the mortgage. Well, that's okay. You qualify. Whatever it is, there's a cutoff. Well, all of a sudden, if the insurance premium goes up more than, say, that $10 a month, they get turned down. So Dan has many, many times taken Mike Paulus's customer,
Pulled them
client,
from the
mortgage,
fire.
and had them redo their homeowner's
Oh, yeah.
insurance. And what Dan, if you under in homeowners insurance, Greg, you probably know they have standard forms. Standard forms just cover everything. The HO3, it's just the way it works. So no matter which company you go to, you're going to get basically the same coverage. So Dan has been repeatedly, when you've got 20, 30, 40 different companies you can shop, one company may be on top of the list, one's on the bottom, and everybody else is somewhere in the middle. Well, who fits you best? That's the one Dan goes with. So now Dan sold it, and the people that took it over are still part of our group. Everybody in his office is still there, the same people.
No, everybody's still there.
Yep. And then the key thing is this: that when I talk to anybody in the office, it's the same scenario.
Yeah.
Rarely did I talk to Dan except on the radio.
With one shining exception.
His wife.
Well, no, actually, again, there's more offerings now that, I'm kind of thinking that when our policies come around again, because they have much more of an offering to bring to bear.
They can shop it even more.
They can shop it even harder.
Right.
And, like I said, more money in my pocket is more money in my pocket.
That's what it is. So then Greg Fasola, attorney, we all started doing the shows together. The whole concept, when I talk to new suspects, one of the first things I come up with is, do you have a will or a trust? And if they don't, I feel the cart and the horse need to be put in the proper order.
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't just a will or a trust.
You sell horses too?
Yeah. Usually dead, but they're in a can. They're good eating sometimes. Anyway,
all comments are responsible.
Yeah. So anyway, they but the concept
Please
is
write.
when you get a will or a trust, you don't just get one document.
Yeah.
You're going to get a power of attorney, a health care surrogate, a living will, things that are necessary to protect not only you while you're alive, but your family and heirs when you do decide to die. So the bottom line is, we started doing the shows way back, and here we are still doing them, but the concept is simple. People have questions. We have different areas of expertise, and our group is roughly 200 years of experience, not including our special guest member, Alan Love, retired prosecuting attorney from Wisconsin, who by himself has over 100 years of experience, because you're really old, Alan.
Well, because of that, I am going to bring some common sense to this show, which I know is a rarity, but I'm going to try
That would be
anyway.
a first.
Just a bit. Why are you doing it now?
Because it's time to do it.
And
I just want to point out something to you. The Republicans did not lose one House seat and flipped 8 Democratic seats. But yet, Joe Biden got 5 million more votes. It does not make common sense to me that people
No, wait a minute.
would
You're not making the math argument, are you? I mean, don't try to make the math argument.
No.
But
it
he is
doesn't
he
make,
is a mathematician.
It doesn't
by the way.
make
well.
it doesn't make common sense to me that
Or the
people
common
would
sense argument.
flip Republican seats and yet vote for Biden.
Let me
Most people don't do that.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
that
go
maybe
ahead.
maybe you
You mean they actually use their head to vote?
Yeah, scary.
Whoa!
Let me ask you again. Since when in your life has logic ever worked?
Since I graduated law school, it has not.
There you go. Yes, and listen, logic does not work in life. It doesn't work with women. You already know that one, Alan. It definitely doesn't work with women.
Well, you were my tutor.
So, then we also have in our group Miss Victoria Lloyd, Remax of Stewart, hardest working realtor alive, most honest, highest integrity. She says she's going to call you at 3 in the morning. Don't go to sleep because she'll do it. And she brought in Mike Paulus back in 08, 09 because The rumors were out there was no mortgage money available, which was never true.
That's when the world came to an end, right?
That's when the world came to an end. The Great
Greg,
Recession.
Greg, did you notice that quick segue after I said what I said?
Certainly.
What's your name again?
Naturally, are you kidding?
And then sitting next to me is Mike Willis. He could be a possible new member of the team because Mike would bring an area of expertise that we have not had before, and that is he's a geek. Is that fair?
That's true. I love fish. I love living in holes, and that used to be the definition of geek way back in the day in the 1800s. Yeah.
Well, was that were you fishing for gefilte fish?
Well, no. They would people in holes. I guess usually they were a little challenged one way or the other, and they'd feed them fish heads. So.
Wait a minute. You've been around since the 1800s?
I have actually. I have done a lot. I mean, right before the birth of the computer on forward is when I have been relevant here. So
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he looks old, but he's really old.
He's really old.
He's really old. 340-1590.
There, Alan.
340-1590. So, Mike, we will get into some conversations before this show is over about what you can bring to our listeners. Here's my thing, and I think people that have known us for years, we've been doing these shows for 16 years. My whole concept was put together a group of local professionals with integrity and experience. And it's worked magnificently, and we have had thousands of people literally that have become clients and friends and customers that appreciate the fact we have local business people with integrity that take care of their people first, more important than are they going to gouge them. And we've all seen this happen in Florida more probably than any place else, and it's been very, very sad. So we try to educate people on what to look out for and what to look for to make their lives better. Is that, Alan, you got to, in spite of the fact that I never pick on you, is that true?
Yes, and Mike, I've got a question for you. There is a lot of confusion going on in the news about this company Dominion that they could change the vote totals down in Venezuela. Can you clarify some of that? What is real and what isn't real?
Well, one of the things I'll maybe kind of say it like this. Every once in a while I get asked, is electronic voting or voting over the internet or with your phone a good idea? And I always tell people, absolutely not. Anything that has a digital footprint can be altered.
But they can't steal an eye print. They can't steal a thumbprint.
Are you sure? There was a time a few years ago. Now, I think they remedied it somewhat, but the iPhone was actually being the iPay system was being hacked almost daily, thousands of times a day with a system that somebody had come up with. And again, they did eventually patch it, but it's just a matter of time and ingenuity. So a few years ago, there was a video that I put out through one of the sites that I administered on Facebook. And I don't think these were Dominion systems, but it was another voting system that...
So what's the story about? Where's the correlation between our election and this Dominion?
Basically, what they're saying is that there is an availability to alter data as it is either coming in or at the end sum, that they have the ability to manipulate the data. With the system that I had demonstrated a couple of years ago that was on video, it was a little SD card that had an altered text file and could literally make the vote appear any way you wanted it to. But the key was you did have to have it programmed before the machines were tallying, and you had to have physical access.
Here comes the question. So people walk into the voting booth today, you mark your thing up, you stick it into this computer slide, and then it calculates
it
right
and
now
onto a CF card.
But that could be altered also.
The CF card, I mean, what this particular hack that was being shown a couple of years ago was, it was being altered as it was being counted. So in other words, if you had shaded in the A block, and it saw that you'd shaded in the A block, or again, it didn't matter which block that you had shaded in, it would read it whatever it was programmed to do.
There you go.
So
But it's not tied to the internet, though.
No, it is not. This is a physical
Computer.
It's a physical hack where somebody would have.
So it's in
altered
the
code.
box.
Right, and that means that it's.
What happens, Greg? Look, fraud has been around forever, and it will always be around. Greed has been around forever,
I
and it
think
will
Joseph
always
Stalin said it's not a matter of the vote; it's a matter of who counts the votes.
Well, isn't that a fair? You know, in defense, I know for a fact that the Democrats are not the only people that have manipulated votes or counted votes incorrectly.
I think that again, this is a thing that has happened. As long as voting has occurred, there's always been somebody on the other side of it trying to figure out how to pack the vote.
Exactly.
Every state needs to do what Florida did.
I agree with you.
I mean, and step up, use the same machine. I can't believe they were talking in Michigan. There must be 40 different kinds of companies with machines.
Well,
up
isn't
there.
the,
It's
see,
like-
here comes the system. It's states' rights, county rights,
Yep.
city rights. I mean, there's no uniformity. Is that right or
I
wrong?
think it comes down to states' rights and how the state then disseminates or requires each state to, in Florida, I think they did limit them to, especially after the 2001. I mean, I came down to Florida here looking to find a guy named Chad to hang after the 2001 election. I was looking for this guy named Chad, and I couldn't find him anywhere. But then, I told people as I was coming down from Ohio, because that's where I originally come from, was Columbus, Ohio. I said, I'm coming down here to teach remedial math. That's basically what I was here for. But all jokes aside, we have cleaned up amazingly. But in Florida here, is there still room for improvement? I think there's always room for improvement because the bad guys never sleep.
There you go.
So the good guys can't either.
But if every state did what Florida did, and then you can do the write-in, and then they count them as soon as they get them.
Okay, that's one. But hey, now listen. It's also called how many times can Grandma vote that died 10 years ago?
Oh, mine only voted about a dozen times.
Okay, my point is greed or falsification of votes is always going to occur. There's going to be a way. Look. Excuse me. When I look in the securities industry, the securities industry is the most regulated industry I think on earth, and yet crooks come along every once in a while.
The new way to do it.
They find a new way around it. They have. You ever hear about this? I'm a fiduciary in the securities business.
Oh, that's a new big thing in the commercials.
That's the biggest single word.
I'm sorry, say that word again.
I know. It's fiduciary.
Oh, okay.
I'll help you with
misheard
that
you.
word. So what happens is that means we always put the client first. Well, guess what? Since day one, I got licensed 30 years ago, and Alan, you know too, that was the biggest single word always. We always put the client first, right?
Absolutely.
Secondly, are there any fiduciaries that are crooks? You ever heard of Bernie Madoff? Minor little thing.
I had a client that was in jail with him.
There you go. So Bernie
says he's a really nice guy, by the way.
Well, you know what happened? Yeah. Well, they said he's probably the happiest he's ever been because he has no pressure on him anymore. Once he's in jail, all his clients can't come and kill him.
Like his wife?
Yeah.
Oh.
But I heard that he was running a cigarette Ponzi scheme for a while while in jail. So I'm not.
If any of you would like to talk to two nice guys and Joe Martek, 340-1590.
340-1590, 340-1590. So the concept of the group is very simple. We're either here to save you money or make you money, but more important is to educate. Now, I got a new subject. This is not a brand new subject. This is our habitual subject, which is COVID. Now, you know how much information is on the tube every day in the media about COVID? Constantly. We're all going to die every minute. We're going to shut down every restaurant. We're going to shut down every bar. Everybody's going to die in the whole country. It's amazing how we're not dying in Florida as much, but that's okay.
It's the sunshine.
I want you being the computer
and the humidity.
geek. Now stay with me on this because you might be able to help me on this. I have researched and researched and researched to try to find out how they calculate the number of people that either have COVID or that are dying from COVID.
Well, even today they said that nationally they gave a number that was somewhere around about 8% infection rate. Well, it's, again, and Alan, I might even defer this to Alan because it all depends on the universe of numbers that you're using.
Stop 1 minute. When I found out 8%, I went through in detail. Well, that included pneumonia and the regular flu. They put it all lumped together.
All lumped together.
So the COVID is 1, pneumonia is 2, and regular flu is 3, and that's 8%. Wait a minute. How can they tell the difference? Well, they can't. They don't. Now here's...
Or maybe if they don't want to.
Or maybe they don't want to. So I listened to this. End result is, yes, more and more people are getting diagnosed with, quote, COVID. Why? Well, one of the reasons is there's more and more testing going on. But number 2, there are people that are not paying attention to the rules of the masks and washing and hygiene, etc. But it doesn't seem to me just that. So I went and contacted some of my unpaid sources and came up.
You're not going to try and read anything.
I'm going to read something.
You're from Detroit, man. You can't read.
Oh, hey, we play basketball though. You got to be careful.
Don't mess with him. Him and Kiss will come and get you.
Let me tell you, I'm gonna send Barry Gordy down here along with Eminem, and
that's right.
You're gonna get double whammied.
Hey, Barry Gordy would be great.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Wouldn't we love to have him? Yeah. Okay, so here's this. I'm going to read this to you. And by the way, when I'm done reading this to you, anybody that wants to get a copy of this emailed, you send my email a request, and I will email a copy of this, forward it to you, because that's how I got it.
And what is your email?
You have an email?
Martek, MARTEKH, @att.net.
When did you get that?
Just be careful. Careful, not be careful.
We've never had that.
Greg, you're not allowed to know anything in this business. You're only allowed to be on the radio and mess up. That's okay.
Mess with them buttons.
Martek, mess with the buttons. Cut Martek off on occasion. That's my job. MartekH@att.net. Okay, here we go. For this pandemic, there's a greater chance of survival for those getting infected 6 months later, say September 2020 versus 6 months earlier, say February 2020. The reason for this is that doctors and scientists know more about COVID-19 now than 6 months ago, and hence are able to treat patients better. I will list 5 important things that we know now that we didn't know in February 2020 for your understanding. 1. COVID-19 was originally thought to cause deaths due to pneumonia, a lung infection, and so ventilators were thought to be the best way to treat sick patients who couldn't breathe. Now we are realizing that the virus causes blood clots in the blood vessels of the lungs and other parts of the body, and this causes the reduced oxygenation. Now we know that just providing oxygen by ventilators will not help, but we have to prevent and dissolve the micro clots in the lungs. This is why we are using drugs, wait a minute, you're going to love this, like aspirin and heparin, blood thinners. Blood thinners that prevent clotting as protocol and treatment regimen starting in June of 2020. Minor little thing. Has anybody ever talked about this? No. I've never seen. I've not seen one piece of media say this is what they're doing now, is making blood thinners to
Part of the problem is any sharing of this type of information, at least through social media, has been totally blocked. And you mentioned the word COVID or possible treatment or possible, home remedy of any type.
Home remedies.
You're immediately
you're a witch doctor.
Yeah.
Anyway, 2. Previously, patients used to drop dead on the road or even before reaching a hospital because of reduced oxygen in their blood, oxygen saturation. This was because of happy hypoxia. Now, that's a major category, happy hypoxia, where even though the oxygen saturation was gradually reducing, the patients did not have symptoms until it became critically less, sometimes even 70%. Normally, we become breathless. Normally, we become breathless when we fall below that number. Knowing about happy hypoxia, we are oxygen saturation of all COVID patients will simply use home pulse oximeters and get them to hospital if their oxygen saturation is 93% or less.
And isn't that one of them little things that reads
you stick your finger
right
in,
at the end of the finger? It reads the oxygen level.
$25 on Amazon, you can have one of these things sitting in your house. You stick your finger in it. It reads your oxygen level. More important than that thermometer thing you shot me with, Greg, when I came in the door that you forgot to change the batteries on that doesn't work well anymore. So this gives you time for correct the oxygen deficiency and a better chance of survival since June 2020. 3, we do not have drugs to fight the coronavirus in 2020. In February of 2020, where only the complications caused by hypoxia. Most patients became severely infected. We have 2 important medicines, remdesivir, and another one is These are antivirals, and they can kill the coronavirus. By using these 2 medicines, we can prevent patients from becoming severely infected and therefore cure them before they go to hypoxia. Now, hypoxia, again, is when the oxygen level gets reduced below 90%, you're going to die. I mean, you got to have an oxygen level around 93 or above. This knowledge we had in June 2020, not in February 2020. Number 4, many COVID patients die not just because of the virus, but also due to the patient's compromised immune system responding to an exaggerated manner called cytokine storm. Now, that word cytokine, I may not be pronouncing it right. C-Y-T-O-K-I-N-E, storm. This strong immune response not only kills the virus, but it also kills the patients. You ever heard sometimes the cure is worse than the disease?
There's a number of conditions that actually, when we were seeing the outbreaks of like the flesh-eating bacteria and such, where there was another condition that would be set off that would basically kill the individual. So
So in February 2020, we didn't know how to prevent it from happening. Now in February 2020, we didn't know how to prevent it from happening. Now in September 2020, we know that it's available medicines called steroids.
Steroids?
Can you imagine that? That around the world have been used for many years, can be used to prevent cytokine in some patients. Okay, now.
You're talking about the stuff that Cliff sells over here on the corner that I could just get some
That's
steroids
it,
from.
That's the stuff.
Cliff.
That's the stuff.
That's what we do out of the back door.
Cliff, we
That's
need
it.
to talk, buddy.
Now, we also know that people with hypoxia became better just by making them lie down on their belly, known as prone position.
Like babies.
Okay.
This is like infants. Infants and infant death syndrome. And
apart from this, a few months ago, Israeli scientists discovered that a chemical known as alpha-defensin produced by the patient's white blood cells can cause the microclots in the blood vessels of the lungs, and this could possibly be prevented by a drug called colchicine. I don't know how to pronounce that. Colchicine. Colchicine.
yeah, you got that one. You own that.
Used over many decades in the treatment of gout. And that's the other thing too. The part of the problem, and look, when hydrochloroquine was called into play and said, held as a potential off-label use drug, I would almost imagine that from your article, if you were to publish that, part of the problem is that off-label use of these drugs, but it doesn't mean that they don't work. Exactly. But you can get a steroid prescribed for almost any condition in the world.
Cheap,
prednisone,
too.
whatever it
Cheap.
is. Cheap as all get out. I mean, we've
Pennies.
all... Yeah. Okay.
Pennies.
So now we know for sure that patients have a better chance of surviving the COVID-19 infection in September 2020 than in February 2020 for sure. Going forward, there's nothing to panic at COVID-19 if we remember that a person with infected later has a better chance of surviving than one who got the infection early. Now, that's the end of this thing. The rest of it is
Can you repeat that list? I was taking my midday nap.
Hey, listen. You nice thing about you, Greg, I can't ever tell when you're awake or asleep, so it makes no difference.
Especially with the mask. I can't. Yeah.
This particular thing, by the way, anybody that listens to this show today that didn't listen to the whole thing, Martek H, M-A-R-T-E-K-H, at att.net. I will have it forwarded to you word for word. Next, today at 4 o'clock, 89.9 FM, I'm going to read this again. So if you want to listen to that show, you can hear it again. But bottom line is, if you want to get a copy of it, Martek H at att.net. One of the situations that we talk about constantly on this show is politics and the lack of transparency in the political system and the bias in the political system and the amount of unbelievable bias in the media. So our position, my position, this is strictly editorial. Greg, can you believe that I editorialize ever?
Never.
That's what I thought. That our job here is to educate the best we can. If I can find some way to help the listening audience, to help our clients, and whether it's with somebody in our team that can impart information and educate people, or if I happen to stumble on something through an unpaid solicitor friend who helped part of my network of people that try to help and inform me, that's my job. That's our mission here. Alan, and you know what we've done for, well, you know, you've been hanging around for 5 or 6 or 7 years now, so you know what I'm talking about.
Tens of thousands of people you've helped.
Thank you. See, I thought it was 2 or 3, but you know, I'm using Victoria's math.
Well, you know, you were talking about transparency. I kind of found it interesting that I found out here recently that during the primaries here in St. Lucie County, this is what was told to me. And I've tried to independently verify it. I haven't been able to completely because they don't actually publish from the Secretary of Elections office these kinds of factoids. But one factoid is during the primaries, poll watchers were actually able to verify signatures of people voting. And that was suspended during the November election. Suddenly, they were no longer able to do that.
Wait a minute. In Florida, you show your driver's license.
You show your driver's license,
you do.
or you sign the little thing, and it has to match what is on record.
So I've never.
Well,
So why do you need a poll watcher?
Well, again, imagine this: poll watchers play a very vital part to make sure that the integrity of the system is upheld. That there are no discrepancies, so that one side or the other can't come back and go, "Hey, you know what? You tilted this for such and so." So it's one of these kinds of functions as a watchdog. And when poll watchers were prohibited from being able to do that in the November election, I find that highly curious, especially in our little burg right here.
It's the concept of here we go. It's back to an honest politician oxymoron. I mean, the system, for some reason, constantly gets rigged in favor of one another. It is so hard for us consumers. Now, in defense of everything, folks, we're in America. I got to tell you, go anyplace else and listen to their political system.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
still the best.
We are the best, and we're going to have problems because man is created to create problems. That's just all there is to it. 340-1590, 340-1590. And Russ, it's Joe Martek. Thanks for calling in, my man. You're on the radio.
The signature thing was a joke because they said use your finger to sign, and I can't do anything but a squiggle with my finger. If I can hold on to something, I can mark my...
And you're
There's
absolutely...
no possible way my signature was even remotely...
And again,
like
I'm
my
not sure
name.
what the official way that they are supposed to look at it is, if it's the one on file, or, again, if you do present them a license, if it has to match the license somewhat.
Wait a minute. But they never asked me to sign anything. They just asked for my driver's license.
In the
You sign stuff here.
in the precinct that I
In
was
St. Lucie County?
Oh yeah, and actually you sign with a Q-tip.
No kidding.
Oh yeah, they and then
Russ got to use his finger, though.
So Russ, where did you vote? What town did you vote in?
It's right off of Midway Road and
But St. Lucie County, basically.
St. Lucie County.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying. Within St. Lucie County, that's what's coming out, is that poll watchers were not able to do that kind of verification in the November election, which, I find very curious.
So, Greg, you voted out St. Lucie West.
No, actually, we voted here at the main St. Lucie elections office.
And you had to use a Q-tip.
And we used a Q-tip to sign our name and then threw it away.
One of them $5 Q-tips, right?
Yeah, and you still had
$50.
$50. And they still had to use your driver's license, right?
Oh yeah.
So you signed. Did you sign, Mike, when you voted? And Alan, you signed. See, Martin County, they didn't have to sign. All they had to do is show the driver's license. Every county is different, right?
Every county is different, and again, there are.
It's a one-party county. That's why.
Well, of course, Martin County is. You know that.
Martin County, I mean, Vicki Davis, I will say this. I've had to call through the different SOEs in the past, and Vicki was one of the few that actually got back with me. And I've not heard any irregularities there, but
I'm sure there are. But
Yeah.
Listen, first of all, they don't have to worry about it because it's a Republican county. If in order to vote, you got to be a Republican. That's all there is to it. Hey, Russ. Other than that, my man, there's not a whole bunch of stuff going on except aggravation, you know?
Right. So once all this stuff's figured out, how do we vote in a new media? Those people are so utterly, completely corrupt.
you vote.
It's not even.
We don't get to vote for the media.
Well, actually, you kind of do. I mean, here last Friday was something that happened. It was called Go Dark Friday, and this was happening on both Facebook and Twitter. And the concept of the idea is that you get off of that social media and go over to some other forum like Parler or MeWe. Within the political sites that I manage,
But
we went Dark Friday.
Okay, how many minuscule amount of people are on that junk?
Yeah, here.
I have within the groups that I manage. There's about 5,000.
Okay, out of
We
what?
went dark
5 million?
Well, it's
50
something
million.
that serves here within the county, within specifically.
Did Russ
St.
go?
Lucie County.
Hey, Russ, thanks for calling in, my man.
Yeah, thank you. Good question.
All I know is this, and when they talk about voting, 10% of the people have an idea what they're doing. 90% of the people vote. My mother voted for Bill Clinton. If Bill Clinton could run again for office, she'd come out of the grave and vote for him because
my mother-in-law was absolutely enamored with his charisma, and
that was it.
Yeah, that was was.
That's all she cared about.
Yeah.
My mother had two kinds of people that she cared about: men that were handsome. That was it. I don't care what her doctor. I wouldn't send a dog to her doctor, but he talked nice to her, and he was a handsome devil.
Well, I mean, to some degree, that's probably why I get the business that I do too. But
you sex symbol you.
Now everybody's going to tune in on the Facebook and go,
right.
We got to see this guy.
340-1590.
So sorry. You're going to be disappointed.
340-1590. Alan.
Yes.
Come on, you're supposed to be keeping us in line.
Well, I have been.
When did that happen?
About 5 years ago.
Okay, I'm going to save this show.
Yeah?
And I want you to take it to Christian FM and run it this afternoon.
The same show?
You don't have a guts to do that.
You're right, I don't.
Because you can't say fiduciary twice in one day.
I said it twice already here.
I don't think that's on the FCC list. I mean, I got to go check that.
Let me
Is
just
there an
tell you.
official list? Maybe I can get really, really close.
There is an official list.
There's one thing that you've got to say about America. If it were in other countries where the election was in dispute like it is now, hundreds of thousands of people might be in the streets demonstrating.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Well,
We're
they
being
are.
patient.
Haven't you watched nightly news?
Well,
it's still early too.
No,
Ellen.
that was a different demonstration. Not
That was a peaceful demonstration. Yeah.
Well, and you're right, because in different countries, and I watch it, they get hundreds of thousands of people get out and demonstrate. Well,
and they get run over with tanks.
We don't do that. We loot and burn and kill and do all kinds of stuff. That's called a demonstration, right? Peaceful.
No, it's actually called a riot. But as far as there are peaceful demonstrations, and our First Amendment ability is a very important one.
Absolutely.
And it's like even some folks that I hang out with where they kind of get a little dismayed about what they see people doing. I'm like, have to remind them. It's like, wait a minute here. They're exercising their rights just like when you go out and you flag wave or whatever for Trump. It's the same difference, and it's an important one to protect.
It is.
Just like unpopular speech. Yeah. You may not agree with what that person is saying across from you, but they have the right to say it, and you should not have the right to limit them. Now,
you mean you don't agree with AOC?
I don't.
That's my girlfriend, man.
That's your girlfriend.
I love her.
And to some degree, actually, she's
You're from
the best
California. You got people.
Best one.
Nancy.
She's the best one on our team.
Nancy.
Meaning, it comes out of her mouth, and it immediately. I mean, I will say this: I was a connoisseur for a while of the AOC memes too. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those.
The what?
The memes, like on Facebook and Twitter,
Yeah,
where
yeah, I've seen
like. just various little things that she supposedly said, and her reactions to it. There's a whole subculture that is based off of that, and we wouldn't have that unless she was allowed to say what she wanted to say in the
what's
first
very
place.
interesting about her is the just out and out threats to Biden and saying you had better follow our lead or else. What does that mean?
Well, listen, all I know is you've got to admit both sides of the aisle have their crazies. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Some are more entertaining than others, and it just makes this part of the system. Now,
Who's
you know
the
what?
crazies on the right, though?
It's been a long, long time since anybody in our congressional houses have had a fist fight. But they did happen many, many years ago.
That's why I'm supporting Tyson.
But still in Europe,
Tyson for
still
Congress,
to this
everybody.
day, they're still beating each other up on occasion. The politicians are.
He will bite an ear if
There
necessary
you go.
on the House floor. Tyson for Congress here in St. Lucie, Canada. Let's get him here. Let's
make it happen.
Yeah.
340-1590, 340
No, but let me ask you,
1590.
have we had? I mean, on the Republican side, who's a crazy in your opinion?
Other than Donald Trump?
Well, setting him aside because he's president within the House and or the Senate, who's an extremist that you could really point to and say, okay, he's an extremist Republican? And I know that some our friends on the
I
left
guess
can
Barry
point out-
Goldwater doesn't count anymore, right?
you got to be a little more relative
be more
to the
current.
More current.
The whack job from Tennessee. What's the doctor? What's his name?
Lamar Alexander, you're talking about?
No.
No, you're
Rand Paul.
The Rand
Rand Paul.
Yeah.
Well,
And I know he's a libertarian.
Very passionate guy. There's a lot of things that I agree with and a lot of things that I don't agree with, but with both him and his father, and he's went to great lengths to try to separate himself from his father and some of his ideas. But that's the point is that I don't see now again from our friends on the left. I'm absolutely positive that they would point out to like Matt Gaetz and a lot of individuals that would come up because again it's opposing thought ideas, not so much.
But here's what happens is radical movements take hold, and there's got to be followers that believe in the radical movement. And there's got to be a way to fund the radical movement.
And energize them and get them over in the first place.
But here comes the right to do that. You have free speech in this country. You have right to demonstrate. You have right to assembly.
Wait a minute. There are two instances over at Harvard where a dean lost his deanship because they didn't like what he was saying.
But that's got nothing to do with the Constitution.
Oh, you're talking the Constitution. Okay.
I'm saying you can lose your job if you don't tote the thing.
Technically,
you can't wear a Trump mask to work for Amazon or whatever.
Well, what about a Harvard student who was a conservative and his classmates didn't like it, and so Harvard asked him to leave the school?
That makes perfect sense to me.
This is crazy.
It isn't. Harvard isn't Massachusetts, right?
Where it kind
Boston,
of gets
yes.
fuzzy is that were federal funds involved at some point during that educational process, and then that's where
Wait a minute, you're using logic again.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. This doesn't work.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to say, guys, is look, we're in America. Thank you, Lord. Thank you,
yes.
thank you. Number one, we do have free speech. That's a critical thing. We have right to demonstrate. We have right to assembly. Now, do we have a right to destroy? No. Is that law being enforced some places, but not enough?
Well, did you see what DeSantis is recently peddling? It's basically kind of like a stand your ground law for rioters, that if you are in mid-riot and you're blocking traffic and other stuff, you are not necessarily obliged to have to stop and subject yourself to.
So I can run them over?
You can run them over. Well, again, I'm not sure the status of the law. I don't think it's actually went through yet. So yeah, there is no legal opinions that are going to be provided here by Mike Willis or Sungeet.
That's
but
it. Right?
I'm just saying that it's something that's being looked at because of.
Well, what happens is the pendulum swings, guys, and it always has. One way, then another, then one way, then another. It never just kind of stays in the middle. It's always got to swing a little bit too far in any direction.
But it's amazing when you look at these rioters, and I was in the middle of People's Park in Berkeley. I mean, I covered that, and that was back in the 60s.
You should have been
weaving rugs,
You
right?
should have been in
Is that what
Detroit
you're-
during the riots.
Selling flowers?
You'd enjoy
Yeah,
it.
so, yeah.
Or Watts.
I had flowers in my hair.
Yeah.
But, you know,
That's when you had hair.
that's when I had hair.
Wow.
Yes.
Anyway.
But, you know, and then I was in the middle of the Santa Barbara riots, too. And you looked at those, and you realized there were about 4 or 5 major organizers. And if I didn't know, I would say they look like the same guys.
They're what?
Yeah.
They look like the same guys. Same guys that were
coincidence?
in Berkeley. What a coincidence.
What a coincidence. Well, you know, that's another thing that we all know. People are paid to demonstrate. They're paid to do things. I mean, the whole concept of what's new in life? Money talks, BS walks. I mean, the bottom line is, is the money behind everything. What are they talking about now about all the people from California that want to move to Georgia so they can vote for in the runoff?
Yeah, there's a flaw with that, though.
Hundreds and thousands of dollars are going to be spent to unelect the Republican Senate members in Georgia.
Yeah, here's a question: why didn't they recount that race as they were recounting the presidential? I mean, why didn't they even look at that? Because
Wrong attorney.
Wrong attorney. Yeah, apparently.
340-1590, 340-1590.
Fire Giuliani.
Fire Giuliani. Hey, he fell asleep on it. Anyway.
Well, you have to admit, there are 2 different goals there and 2 different 2 different things that are happening. I'm just saying though that it was a question. It's a valid question in my mind that why didn't if there was a question about the races as they were recounting these, why didn't they recount both?
You're using logic again.
Again, yeah.
Okay, let me talk up some business for 1 minute, and this happens to me almost every week, and it happened again this week. I had a lady client that I met. She's a very successful business person.
A new ex-wife, maybe?
New ex-wife.
Oh, okay.
She's very, very successful. She's retired now. Everything in the world is working right. And she showed me a couple of different products that she had been sold, and both were called index annuities.
Oh.
And I said, do you know what these are? And she goes, well, not really. And I said, here's what we're going to do. I call the company up directly in front of her, get permission from the company to talk to me about what she had. And I said, let me show you something here in this contract where you thought you were invested in the market, but it has a word that's called CAP, C-A-P. Do you see that right there? And I showed her where she had it, but she didn't know what it meant. Now, CAP, if you're not explaining what a CAP is, that's something you put on your head, right? Now, if you have it in your contract someplace and you look at it and you say, okay, who cares? You know, CAP goes on the end of a toothpaste thing.
I thought it was like my old cap gun when I was a kid.
Cap gun. I mean, it's all kinds of words for CAP. So
the John Wayne gun set.
I asked this right with the lady there. I said, okay, what is her cap? And she goes, oh, it's 1.75. And I said, what does that mean? Well, that means she can never, she didn't phrase it this way, that the most she can make in 1 year is 1.75%. And I said, okay.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Then my client is, not client, this is a prospect, is sitting there. And I said, did anybody explain that to you? And she goes, no. I said, if somebody had explained that to you, would you have bought this? No.
Was this somebody that she was working with locally, or was this somebody that solicited
a local
her?
Insurance agent. What happens is this, folks, when you look at these, what's called a fixed index annuity, use 3 words, fixed index annuity. Or if it just says index annuity, number 1, it's not a security. This is not stocks or bonds or mutual funds. This is an insurance product. It's an insurance contract. It's a fixed annuity. They pay an interest rate. So the way they calculate the interest is based on the performance of something with a cap. So the market went up 30% last year.
They got
1.75.
Yeah, wow.
That's it, 1.75. That's the most she can earn. Now, some of these contracts allow the insurance company to change the cap. Some of them say it can never go below 1. Well, okay. But I'm trying to say sometimes these contracts
This is
allow.
absurdity.
Well, absurdity is the best word I've ever heard for this thing, because that's the nicest word I can possibly use for this junk. The saddest thing that I look at is that insurance products have to be approved by the state insurance commission. They approve these things. Because why do they approve them? Because all of that stuff is written down and explained in the contract. But guess what? Do you think anybody can read? Have you ever tried to read your homeowner's insurance contract, your automobile contract?
Unfortunately, I am that guy that actually
Oh,
attempts to.
No,
You know what?
I never
No,
have.
I attempt to.
Would you say you're the exception to the rule?
I would well,
He's definitely the exception.
honestly,
Besides being a sex symbol, give me the other part.
my wife is actually truly she actually was one of the first that got me doing this. She was like, "Have you read the details about this?" And I'm like, "Well, no, maybe I better." And we started looking at them together, and it made a lot of other questions, which we would then call and say, "Well, gee, what happens if such and such happens?" And we start playing scenarios with the agent based on the verbiage that's in there. And if your place burns down, that means you get nothing. What?
It makes me sad to be an attorney and to have these contracts being written by attorneys with this language. There really should be a consumer law that the meat of the contract should be in plain, understandable English on page 1.
You know what? But guess what? Then they'd have an attorney write the meat page and make that less understandable than the whole contract.
Not fiduciary of the responsible party as we both negotiate the amount of it. Yeah.
Well, what's the rule? Attorneys get paid by the word, right?
I'll be happy to write the meat page so people can understand it.
Here comes another one. Now this is in defense of Greg Fasula, attorney. I had a client of mine says, "Joe, I've got this trust, and would you take a look at it and tell me what it says?" So she came with me with 9 pounds of documents. I'm talking, I had to go down to her car to carry it into my office. Then I took it over the weekend.
Still have a back problem from it, probably.
And I came back with a 1-page document and said, the most important part is you die, here's who gets the money. I mean, that's really what the whole thing is about. You're dead, who gets the money, and how do they get it? She goes, well, that's not what I wanted. And I said, well, if you go back to your attorney, he's going to charge you to do an amendment. And now you'll have 10 pounds of documents rather than 9 pounds. So bottom line is I said, go see Greg. Let him redo this thing and make it the way you want it.
Actually, Greg did all of my family's work in those matters. And again, I went to Dan at some point and I said, hey, Dan, who would you recommend for something like this? He's like, don't you listen to the show? I'm like, what show? He goes, it's on 1590 every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. And I'm like, wow. And that's when I started listening, and now I'm here. Wow.
The key thing I'm talking about is, folks, we're here to help people. Anytime we can, we will. Remember that website, my email address, martek@att.net. That's Martek. This 8-page document that I tried to copy off the internet, I can just forward you. But it gives you a lot of insight into what's going on with this COVID thing, and where you can physically make sure or be educated yourself better. Until next week, we're gone, right?
Aloha.
Aloha. All right.
You've been listening to the Team Martek Hour. The Team Martek Hour is a paid program. The content was provided by the advertiser. WPSL, its staff, management, and ownership were not responsible for its content. Investment involves risk. Prior to making any investment, an investor should meet suitability requirements. Past results are not necessarily indicative of future performance. Neither the opinions expressed nor the information provided constitutes a recommendation to purchase or provide investment advice. The material presented is not a substitute for obtaining professional advice from a qualified person or firm. Securities offered through Centaurus Financial, member FINRA and SIPC. Tune in again next Wednesday at 11:05 for the Team Martek Hour here on WPSL 1590.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie. Time now, 12 noon.